Spire of the Watcher marks the third and final dungeon that will be revamped as part of the Rite of the Nine event coming out later this episode. Spire released back in Season of the Seraph, and the loot and difficulty are both getting refreshed, and I wanted to round out my saga of dungeon guides for the Rite of the Nine event. This video will cover mechanics and current meta options to help out anyone who may either have forgotten the dungeon or hadn't necessarily given it a try before this episode. Like with the other two dungeon guides that I've done, I'm planning to make my non-gaming wife watch this and then do the dungeon for the very first time. We've already done Prophecy, but she had to relearn the controls of the game in that dungeon, which was a bit hard. So stay tuned for this dungeon when we get around to it. Before I jump into the video though, I just want to say that if you find this video helpful or useful, please leave a like. Any and all support is absolutely appreciated, and if you're enjoying my other videos, maybe hit the subscribe button too. Thanks as always to everyone who has been showing my small channel some support. It honestly means a lot to me seeing my content being helpful or entertaining to others, so thank you. Anyway, you've probably had enough of me being all sappy. Onto the video. For Spire of the Watcher, we're basically becoming Arctricians. The dungeon mechanic for Spire of the Watcher is the process of chaining arc lightning or electricity along cables. It's a pretty straightforward mechanic compared to some of the other dungeons available, but the difficulty comes from learning and remembering the location and path of each of the cables. To be able to channel arc through the cables, you need to obtain a buff called Arctrician. This gives you the ability to shoot and charge each of the connections or nodes and channel the arc lightning through the cable from the starting node to the end node. You can get the Arctrician buff by killing Vex minotaurs and standing in the ring of energy that it drops on the ground. When you stand in this ring, you will gain Arctrician with a 30-second timer. So you have 30 seconds to connect nodes together before you need to refresh your buff by killing another minotaur. Every node you successfully chain together will give you about an extra 5 seconds on your timer, up to a maximum of 45 seconds. So it is possible to complete all of the chains in a single Arctrician buff without refreshing your timer. However, don't worry if you run out of your buff, there is no negative side effect when this happens. Every node you have connected stays connected, and you can always go and refresh Arctrician whenever you need. In this opening section, there are 4 cables that need to be connected from their starting nodes and chained all the way to the closing node. Once you learn where each of the nodes are, it becomes much easier to do this dungeon, but learning the location of each of the nodes is where the challenge of the dungeon presents itself. Now, I don't see much point in a map for this encounter since you can just follow the cables, but I will leave a link to an X post by Tenroken that has Spire maps for this dungeon, so check it out if you feel you need them. Now, the starting node or box for each cable looks very different to the rest. It has 2 side panels indicating that power goes this way, and to start the flow of arc through the cables, you just have to shoot this node while you have the Arctrician buff. Then from here, you just follow the cable until you reach another node and shoot it. You will know if you have done things correctly because the node will glow and spark and the cable will turn blue, indicating that the connection has been made. If it doesn't glow, that means you've missed a node and you should retrace your steps to find what you have missed. This will probably happen when different cables overlap and you follow the wrong one out of the clump or mess of cables. When you've linked every node in the cable, including the start and the end nodes, the entire chain will close up, indicating that the cable is complete. My general tip for this first encounter is don't close any of the cables until right at the end when you can do them all at once. Just leave them all almost completed until you're ready to finish, because more enemies will spawn every time you finish a cable. So it's easier to finish them all at once and skip all of the extra enemies that spawn. Completing the entrance encounter will have you drop down this giant hole and traverse over this giant open space. There are a bunch of snipers and other frustratingly accurate enemies, so be careful. I would suggest switching to a build with grapple, as it can save you from a mistake or make some of the jumps much easier, or you can use it to skip the room entirely. There is a secret chest that you can jump up to, but again, Strand makes this process much easier. After you've made your way through the jumping puzzle-esque section, you will be smack bang at the start of encounter 1. This encounter is almost identical to the opening of the dungeon: connect cables from start to finish while being shot at. except this time there are 3 floors to the tower and there are only 2 cables per floor. To unlock the door to the lift, which takes you up to the next floor, you need to complete the 2 electrical cables on your current floor. There will be a Vex Minotaur somewhere on your floor that you're able to hunt down and take out so that you can get the Arctrician buff. From there, find one of the starting boxes and follow the cable along, shooting each node as you go until you reach the end and the cable locks. When you've locked both cables on a floor, the door in front of the lift will open and you can jump in to head up to the next level. It is possible to take your Arctrician buff up to the next level and save yourself some time, but I wouldn't worry about doing this until you're comfortable and familiar with all of the node locations, as you're going to end up falling off the map when you rush. The enemies aren't very aggressive in this encounter. You have the Minotaur who respawns regularly so that you can refresh your buff. Some goblins will spawn on the wider platforms and then haphazardly teleport around. There will also be hydras and harpies that spawn out in the sky, and these can be a little bit painful if you have to stay in one spot to find a node, so bringing options to deal with them when you're learning is always recommended. Each and every floor functions the same as the last. Get the buff, follow the cables, and don't die. Just rinse and repeat until you've completed all of the floors. My loadout recommendations for this encounter is all about ad clear, so Trinity Ghoul, Sunshot, and Graviton Lance are all great picks. If you want your exotic slot for something else, then the bow from the Season Pass and Nemesis will be a great legendary option. You will have to deal with some hydras occasionally, so having something that can go through the shield will make your life so much easier. A sniper is a great option this season as we have anti-barrier sniper in the artifact, so dealing with hydras is a whole lot easier when you use this. Alternatively, you can use a rocket sidearm, but I have had weird hit registration through the hydra shield. There is no delay between encounter 1 and encounter 2. You jump up onto the roof and the boss fight is right there. Be careful walking around this section as the encounter starts if you walk too far away or too close to the center. If you stand on the diamond box just underneath the boss, that will start the encounter. So just skirt around this diamond and walk over to the rally flag. Now, unless things have changed since the last time I looked, this dungeon boss's health pool is exactly the same as the raid boss version, but don't let this dishearten you, as he goes down pretty quickly with the right loadout, and this season is no exception. I feel like a broken record when I say this, but the encounter is practically the same as the last one. Get the buff, connect the cables, and don't die. Except you can add DPS to the end of that list before rinsing and repeating. The starting nodes are at the center of the tower. You can see all 4 of them quite easily from the rally flag, so when you have Arctrician, pick any one of these cables, start it, and follow it to the end. Some of the cables will trick and confuse you as you try to follow them along the metal beams. In some cases, the cable goes underneath and there is a sneaky hidden node. You'll know if you missed something because the cables won't connect until you activate each node in order, so you'll know if you missed something. Every time you complete a cable, harpies will spawn around the platform. They're generally not an issue if you keep moving, but as you learn and go slower, they might cause you trouble, so stop and do some ad clear if needed before continuing with the encounter. Continue to close each cable going one by one or spreading your fire team out and doing it all simultaneously. When you close the 4th and final cable, the DPS phase will start at the last cable closed. Make sure you communicate with your team each time you close a cable because everyone should know which cable is going to be the last one. When the final node is closed, the boss will start moving towards it. So everyone in the team should head there when this is happening and get ready for DPS. As soon as the boss reaches your team, it will open up and show a dozen or so red circles. As a team, you will need to shoot all of the circles and destroy them. Explosive weapons don't work, so you will need to hit it with a hit scan weapon or a weapon that shoots bullets. As soon as you break all of the eyes, the boss will do 2 things. The first thing is it will reveal a white gem at the center of its body, and you need to shoot this crystal to deal damage to the boss. The second thing that it does when you break all of the eyes is it starts to retreat away from you back to the center of the tower. If you decide to chase the boss during DPS because from range it becomes hard to hit the crit, be careful not to fall into the holes along the beam, as this will just take away from your DPS time as you claw your way out of the hole. When the boss reaches the middle of the tower again, you will have a little bit more time for DPS and then it becomes immune again. If you don't manage to one phase it, then just rinse and repeat everything that I've said already until you manage to beat the boss. There is no enrage timer on this encounter, so you don't have to worry about beating it in 3 phases or less. You can take as many DPS phases as your team needs. The most important thing is that you don't wipe to easy mistakes. For loadouts, since you have to ad clear and do DPS, you will have to split if you don't have a well, then distance is definitely important. Just start blasting the boss as soon as the door opens, and don't stop until you hit immune. I think the boss still takes extra damage from supers, so don't forget to slam him with something hard hitting like Thunder Crash or Nova Bomb. If you don't get a one phase in, then rinse and repeat the encounter starting from the Hydras until you secure the kill. When thinking about what loadout to run, because the boss is up in your face so often, I recommend Concussive Resist and at least one Void Resist mod on your chest piece. This will help to keep you alive throughout the entire encounter. I recommend at least one person running a Well of Radiance for DPS, as having healing during DPS is going to be more important than the damage, especially if you're up the front. For DPS specifically, I suggest anything that doesn't require critical hits to be effective. The issue with this boss is the crit is so difficult to hit that there's really no point running a precision weapon. You could have someone run Divinity if you really wanted to run a precision weapon for this boss, but really anything goes. Since his model is very large and he doesn't try to evade your attacks constantly, it makes it very easy to hit with these. Since there's not a whole lot of ad clear involved in this encounter, you don't really have to build into it very much. Just a decent weapon that can deal with the Hydras and the Minotaurs quickly is all you really need. And that about wraps it up for this guide. I feel this dungeon is very manageable once you learn the location of the nodes and cables, so just keep at it until you manage to get your clear. Anyway, see you in the next one. Ciao!